Number 1. Angels. In Scripture, God used several means of protecting His people, including angels. Angels are your powerful and militant ministers. Every redeemed soul has a company, not just one of angels at his disposal. The empire of angels is as vast as God's creation. If you believe the Bible, you will believe in their ministry. They crisscross the Old and New Testaments, being mentioned directly or indirectly nearly 300 times. In times of physical and spiritual attack and threatening situations of all kinds, those who trust in the Lord find Him to be a strong protector. Ultimately, our protection comes from God. Psalm 18. He is a shield to all who take refuge in Him. How David made use of his angels. Just like Jesus, David was a man that believed in the reality of angels. David kept the angels so busy that he was able to win every single battle he fought throughout his entire life. David frequently dispatched angels to pursue his enemies. The psalmist wrote that the God of Jacob would protect you, that He will send you assistance from His sanctuary, and that He will remember all of the sacrifices you have made. Some put their faith in horses, while others rely on chariots. However, God will defend those who follow the terms of the covenant. Because God is their defense, they will continue to stand tall, even when everyone else is falling. Psalm chapter 35, verses 4 through 6. Let those be ashamed and dishonored who seek my life. Let those be turned back and humiliated who devise evil against me. Let them be like chaff before the wind, with the angel of the Lord driving them on. Let their way be dark and slippery, with the angel of the Lord pursuing them. For emphasis, David prayed twice for the intervention of God's special messenger, the angel of the Lord. David could rightly pray that those who came against him did so without cause. Sometimes God protects His people by sending one of His angels to meet our physical needs. One such story is the story of Hagar in Genesis 21. After being cast out of Abraham's household on account of Sarah and Isaac, we find Hagar and her son Ishmael wandering in the wilderness without adequate water. We can pray on the same principle against our spiritual adversaries, the principalities and powers that battle against us in the spiritual realm. The devil has snares, and he has strategies set against us. This describes another way God may send His protection and care unto His people, through His angels, commanding them to keep and bear up His people. How angels thus keep us, we cannot tell. Whether they repel demons, counteract spiritual plots, or even ward off the subtler physical forces of disease, we do not know. Perhaps we shall one day stand amazed at the multiplied services which the unseen bands have rendered to us. Spurgeon. Let us remember that it is God whose these angels are. He gives them charge. From Him they receive their commission. To Him they are responsible for their charge. From God thou art to expect them, and for their help He alone is to receive the praise. It is expressly said, He shall give His angels charge, to show that they are not to be prayed to nor praised, but God alone, whose servants they are. Clark. Angels are motivated by an inexhaustible love for God. David says of angels, He who dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. For He shall give His angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Psalm chapter 91, verses 1 and 11 through 12. Throughout Scripture, we find stories of God's people triumphing over impossible odds in physical and spiritual battles. Angelic visitors escorted Lot out of Sodom before destroying it. Genesis 19. Angelic guards went ahead of the Israelites to protect them as they left Egypt and entered Canaan. In 2 Kings 19, it was the angel of the Lord who slayed 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. And when our risen Lord rides into Armageddon, he will be accompanied by armies of angels. I don't know about you, but I'm glad these warriors are on our side. Angels guide God's people as tactical experts. In Genesis 31, we find Jacob amid a colorful situation. God's people do not need to be concerned about outcomes. They only need to be concerned about obeying God's plans. As provisioners, angels equip God's people for victory. There are numerous other examples of angelic guidance in the Bible. In the New Testament, an angel gave specific instructions to Jesus' earthly father, Joseph, to protect the young Jesus and his mother. Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Matthew chapter 2, verse 13. An angel appeared to Jesus from heaven and strengthened him in the Garden of Gethsemane, just after Christ's famous prayer. Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Luke chapter 22, verse 42. Luke tells us that an angel appeared to Jesus from heaven and strengthened him. God provides for all of our needs so that we can be courageous and victorious, and He sometimes sends His angels to do the equipping. Angels were also sent to protect the prophet Elisha and his servant. Let us set the scene. Ancient Aram, now Syria, was at war with Israel, and the king of Aram was troubled that the prophet Elisha was able to predict where his army intended to go, warning Israel's king so that he could develop Israel's army's strategy. The king of Aram decided to send a massive army to the city of Dothan to capture God's prophet Elisha and prevent him from assisting Israel in winning the war. The ruler could only make the most basic plan in his tent, with Elisha relaying it in detail to the king of Israel so he could take appropriate countermeasures. Nothing escapes God's notice. He was well versed in the movements of Israel's adversaries. Israel's enemies may have secretly plotted to harm them, but God protected them. The king of Israel made a wise decision by listening to Yahweh's prophet. When Elisha informed Israel's king of the Aramean king's movements, he demonstrated not only Yahweh's power on his behalf, but also to the Aramean king that Yahweh was Israel's protector. God's blessing on His people was both a gift to them and a demonstration to others of who Yahweh is. The Lord revealed so many of the enemy's plans to Elisha that the king of Aram became so enraged that he accused his servants of harboring an Israeli spy. When he discovered that Elisha, Israel's prophet, was the source of his problems, he dispatched horses, chariots, and a massive army to capture him. However, because this was the same prophet who had healed Aram's army commander, he would not be quickly apprehended. When Elisha's servant saw the horde of enemy forces encircling their city, he cried out, "Oh, my master, what are we to do?" But Elisha was unconcerned. He saw with faith-filled eyes and declared, "Those who are with us outnumber those who are with them." His assurance here is reminiscent of the Apostle John's exhortation to believers. The one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. 1 John chapter 4, verse 4. When we align with God, our adversary is constantly outnumbered. And Elisha prayed, "Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see." Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked, and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 17. When God's servants are doing His will and doing His work, they are invincible until the task is completed. As the enemy came down toward him, Elisha prayed to the Lord, "Strike this army with blindness." So he struck them with blindness, as Elisha had asked. Elisha told them, "This is not the road, and this is not the city. Follow me, and I will lead you to the man you are looking for." And he led them to Samaria. After they entered the city, Elisha said, "Lord, open the eyes of these men so they can see." Then the Lord opened their eyes, and they looked, and there they were inside Samaria. The Lord answered Elisha's prayer, and his servant saw God's army. Horses and fire chariots surrounded Elisha. It was a divine protection wall. The divine intervention went so far as to blind the enemy army and allow Elisha to lead them right into Israel's camp. Centuries after God opened the eyes of Elisha's servant, the Apostle Paul wrote that we should prepare ourselves with God's protection.